Hi, welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is part 2 of my Adirondack preparedness of what could happen here in the Adirondacks. Blizzards, ice storms, it doesn't matter. So last week we had part 1, which we talked about food and water, what I do. This time we're talking about cooking, heating, and lighting. Follow along. Okay, folks, number 2 on the list, now that we had your food and your water, is cooking. Yes, you're going to need to be able to cook. If you have a gas stove in your house or your apartment, you're fine. You're fine. You'll be able to cook on that gas stove, even if there's no power. If you have electronic ignition on your stove, you can take a lighter and light it. As far as I know, you can still do that even on the newest stoves. But if you don't have a gas stove, you have to find a way to cook. And guess what? There are many different ways to cook out there, from getting a Coleman stove to the individual burner to a backpacker. And this stove here fits into this little thing here. And as you can see, there's nothing in that pot, and it holds the pot up there just fine. But this stove here, if you're a camper, this stove costs about $45 to obtain, and it runs off in propane. These are fairly cheap to get. I would recommend not storing these in your preparedness closet. If you have a garage space or someplace else that you can store these don't have a history of leaking, but just like anything else, it could. There's that chance. I keep mine right in my camper all year long. Cold weather, it gets down to 50 below sometimes here. So weather's not going to affect this, and plus the fuel is not going to go bad. The thing is, you're going to want to buy at least 4 of these on hand for your cooking. If it's a prolonged event, you may go through these quicker than you think you can. The other nice thing about these is that you can get a light to go on top. I'm not sure you can burn these inside a house though with that light on. I think that you would still need to have some vent, a window cracked open, because I'm not sure about the fumes that this gives off. I know it gives off, if it's burning clean, it'll only give off carbon dioxide and moisture. And you get the moisture on your windows from burning something like this, that's what it is. That's what this fuel does. If you can't store something this big, another option to have is your Coleman single burner stove. Now these run about $70. They're very efficient, they work very well. They run off in Coleman fuel. Coleman fuel goes in here, and they work under pressure where you have to pump it up and then light it to keep a good flame going. Now the nice thing about having this in Coleman fuel is you can also use it in a Coleman lantern to give yourself light. They take the same fuel. I have Coleman fuel at home. I have had for almost 20 years. And it's still good. As long as you keep it in its original container, it's still good. But these 2 items are nice to have, work well, you can store right in your preparedness closet. The last one, and a nice little item to have, is this backpacker stove. Saw that you got to boil water, fits right on there nicely, and it does a fantastic job. I have used this. This fuel comes, it's an isobutane propane fuel mix that screws right on the top. This fuel is safe to keep in your preparedness closet. And if you need to boil water, heat water for your freeze-dried food, or cook food, this works pretty well. And it lights. Has a lighter. There it goes. It's burning. I can just barely see a flame on that blue flame. And it heats up water really, really quick. Does a fantastic job and fits right into this when it's being stored. So this is a nice little item to have. These only cost like $15 to get. You have to get a couple of fuel things, and I'm not sure if there's a light that you can screw onto this when you're not using the stove. Okay, number 3 on the list, heating and lighting. Now, if you're in a northern climate like I am, heating is going to be important for a good 6-7 months out of the year. I have a wood stove in my house. I learned a long time ago why my parents had a wood stove in their house. Is because growing up, we never had, whenever there was an event, a blizzard, one of the biggest events growing up, I was 7 years old, was the blizzard of '77. And it was, I don't remember any kind of inconvenience out of it at all. I remember we didn't have school for a few days, but we had snow that was up to the garage door windows in our driveway. And my neighbor had a John Deere loader, and that's what removed all the snow out of the driveways, their house and my parents' house. And I remember he stacked the snow up in the backyard, and I thought it was great because I now had a little mountain to slide down. But I remember that event, and I don't remember any kind of, my parents always had a garden. My dad raised pigs, my uncle raised beefers, my other uncle raised chickens and turkeys, and they interchanged those when they went to the butcher there in the fall. We always had food. We always had, my parents have a room off the garage that gets the cool from the basement that has everything canned. Canned corn, has potatoes there, there's tomatoes, canned peas, canned carrots, everything you could ask for. And we had a wood stove, so heat was never an issue. And that's what I wanted to make my house like. I learned that after the '98 ice storm. I didn't have a wood stove then. I do now. So heat is essential in some states where you might live. You might need heat. If you don't have a wood stove or can't have a wood stove, I recommend a buddy heater. Now, buddy heater runs off the propane. Now, it will only get about 4 hours of heat out of this 1 pound container. What do I recommend? I recommend this, getting a hose with a 20-pound barbecue tank. You can get a lot more out of it. Now, I've gone camping before where I've used this to heat the camper, and I barely put a dent in my propane tank. You may ask why not just use your furnace? Well, in some areas you can't use a generator, unlike over here. But you can't use a generator, and my solar, because this time of year, your solar, your chances of recharging get smaller and smaller and smaller, the hours. I mean, during the summer months, you have 5 to 6 hours. Once it starts getting October, you're down to 3 to 4 hours a day that you can get prime solar, and if it's a cloudy day. So running the furnace all night long in my camper will kill my batteries pretty quickly. So I rely on this right here, buddy heater. They're a decent little unit. They're a clean burning unit, but if you get these, they're only going to last you about 4 hours with a 1 pound container. If you get a 20-pound cylinder, you're going to get what, 60, 80 hours heat from this, but you also got to get a hose to feed this. Now your lighting, one of the things that I have in my house that I actually use are gas lights. Well, they're oil lamps basically, and I have, I don't know, I have a lot of them. I probably have 10 of them anyways throughout my house, and I actually have an Aladdin lamp, and I love the Aladdin lamp. If you choose to buy an Aladdin lamp, they're expensive. They're about $150. Now you can buy your average oil lamp at Walmart for 10 bucks. You can get the fuel with it. I recommend getting a higher grade fuel than what they sell at Walmart, because that way your wicks will last longer. But an Aladdin lamp, two things with an Aladdin lamp. One, it gives you a lot of light and it puts off a lot of heat. But you have to buy the Aladdin fuel with it. 1 gallon of Aladdin fuel is about $30. Aladdin lamp is about $150, their average lamp. But it's awesome. It gives out a ton of light and gives off heat, and it will actually heat a room for you. So if you have it in your budget, and you can kill two birds with one stone basically with that Aladdin lamp. Now, the Aladdin lamp, if you're going to try to sleep, you got to have the Aladdin lamp on to produce heat, and it produces a lot of heat. But I love these units right here. It's always worked well for me. You do have to have a window cracked open. I highly recommend it. People are going to say, oh, they give off carbon monoxide. I did a test on that. Here's the video that I did on that. And being a former firefighter and fire chief, I've gone on plenty of carbon monoxide calls, and I took the meter and I ran this in my camper, and I've got zeros all the way across the board, but I did have a window cracked open. The other thing that this gives off is a lot of moisture, a lot of condensation, because when a clean burning unit burns any fossil fuels, when they burn cleanly, they give off carbon dioxide and moisture, condensation. So be aware of that. Another item to give off a lot of light that I showed earlier is a Coleman lantern. Gives off a lot of heat, but it also, I wouldn't recommend running this in a closed space. I've run this in my garage before in power outages, but I've had the door open. So I do believe this gives off some fumes. It may smell. I'm not sure on the carbon monoxide aspect of a Coleman lantern. So I would not run this in a closed space. But if you are in an apartment and you have sliding glass doors that go out to a patio, you have one of these, and it's nice weather where you can keep the screen door open, run it. Run it. Make sure you have working smoke alarms with batteries and working carbon monoxide alarms with batteries. Alright folks, well there you have it. 3 parts down in my Adirondack Preparedness. Food and water, which was in part 1. This video had cooking, heating, and lighting. And next week's video, my Adirondack Preparedness, will be power and what I do for power and how I manage for power. Because I've been through storms in which we've had no power for almost a month. So continue to follow along. Look forward to seeing you next week. Alright folks, you watched all the way through. Thanks for that. If you liked the video, make sure to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button down below. Continue to follow the adventure. And remember folks, tomorrow is no guarantee for any one of us. So disconnect from that Wi-Fi, connect to this out here. You won't be disappointed.